Hi, good evening. I think we have John and Marcia with us, and as others join, a couple of others are joining. So I'll admit them in. And we want to honor your time, and so we will go ahead and get started. So this evening we have again with us Chris Stendel, who is our facilitator, and he's Scholarship America's Director of IT Infrastructure. So we're asking that you please put your self on mute. Please mute your mic, and then we will have, you can just type your questions into the chat, and we'll ensure that Chris addresses those questions for you. So I'll just continue to admit folks as they come in, but we do ask you to just mute yourself, and I will hand it over to Chris.
Thank you, Nicole. Hi, I'm Chris again, and I've been working in IT for almost 23 years, and roughly 20 of those years have been working with some sort of security component to my job. I've worked for Scholarship America since May of 2018, so just over 5 years now, and doing security for us since the day I started. I've worked on nearly every side of IT, from IT infrastructure and hosting to IT development to quality assurance to business analysts and even into management. Back when I was a better programmer, I used to dummy down websites, and then I would end up showing people the different types of attacks that you could do against those websites. I only know the basics of hacking. I would not say I'm an advanced hacker, but I can do some of it. In a more recent history, I've worked on the governance, risk, and compliance side of the organization, dealing a lot with security assessments and vendor management and more of the defense too of the organization. Since I started at Scholarship America, we've taken the organization many steps forward in our security posture. I would be remiss if I didn't mention my team. I have 4 people that report to me, which are a network administrator, a cloud ops administrator, a security analyst, and DevOps engineer that, with a customer base that basically expands to everyone, staff, and even our students and customers and affiliates and everybody else. So we basically touch everybody, whether you know it or not. And my team does a fantastic job. I'm very, very fortunate to have them. So the topic today that we have is extremely
Chris,
important.
may I interrupt you?
Sure.
Interrupt you for just one moment. So I would be remiss if I did not acknowledge my team member. So we have with us this evening also Matthew Lust. Matt Lust is one of our very helpful tech support specialists. And so you all just give Matt a wave, because he's one of those folks that help you out when you have your issues with ChapterNet. So I apologize for interrupting, Chris, but did not want to let Matt go unacknowledged.
No, you have a great team there between Julie and Matt. They're fantastic support people. So big shout out to them as well. The topic today is extremely important as attacks happen here. This is kind of the primary entry point of how they actually happen. And it's probably the most common attack that you'll see out there. And this affects your systems, your data, even your life, basically out there, and how people can take it. So one of the big things that we end up seeing is that, everybody really needs to have some security awareness training. We have the element, or the human element really continues to drive the vast majority of data breaches and information that's stolen. This year, 82% of the breaches, and this is actually 2022, involve the human element, and whether it is the use of stolen credentials, phishing, or smishing, and misuse, or just a simple error, people continue to play a very large role in those particular instances of breaches and alike. The new report, comes from the annual Verizon Data Breach Report, investigation report. And the latest results are very similar. It is still very high. The latest number I've been hearing is 74% of the actual attacks that are actually happening for this year's data. So it has gone down a little bit, but there's still, again, a very significantly high number. So So moving on, we have a trivia question. If you weren't aware, this is an interactive session. So the question is, does anyone know how many FBI cybercrime complaints there were in 2022?
People have answered. I'm going to go ahead and close the poll and share the results. See them?
So the next, so basically the answer to this question is B. It's 724,000 complaints were logged in 2022. That is a slight decline here. Last time there was 837,000 complaints that were logged to the FBI. So definitely still a very significant number of complaints just across in cybercrime in general. So we'll get into some of the definitions today, because some of you may not be familiar what phishing is, what smishing is, or what phishing is, as well as a number of other terms here. So I definitely want to go through and kind of explain what they are, because it is kind of funny terms. So phishing here is really the fraudulent practice of sending emails to that purportedly are believed to be reputable of companies or individuals to induce an individual to reveal personal information such as passwords, social security numbers, banking information, or credit cards. So basically they're sending emails to try and be malicious to you, to make you click on like a link or get into answer a question or answer some data or fill out a form there to get you to reply to answers essentially and collect more of your information or your usernames and passwords out there. Smishing is the same thing, except it is around text messaging. So you're going to have where you got the fraudulent practice of sending text messages purportedly to be from the reputable company or an individual, somebody that in order to induce you or other individuals to reveal personal information such as passwords, again, social security, banking information, or credit card numbers. The vast majority of these you'll see tends to be around delivery, or it tends to be around banking, as they are trying to generally defraud you or basically extort you of money. And phishing is the fraudulent practice of making phone calls or leaving voice messages, again, to be from various companies or individuals to pull some of that, again, that banking information or credit card information. You probably hear a lot of this about phone mail scams as well that happen out there. This is really part of that as well. And then the other one that we have here is spam. And spam is really just unsolicited emails sent to a large number of recipients, usually for advertising in nature. These are not considered malicious. However, they can be annoying. These emails can also be sent to the same email user over and over again, which is again where they become very annoying. But this would not be considered, any of these would not be considered an attack. It's just an annoyance. And a lot of people do have a hard time distinguishing between phishing and spam. Again, phishing is trying to end up getting data from you. It's being very malicious. Spam is not necessarily doing that to be malicious for you. So, and one of the things I do like to talk about with spam, I'll just give a very, very short story here. For my first company that we worked for, we actually built a one-to-one marketing engine basically to do the advertising responses and stuff. We ended up calling it Blue Ox Mailbox. That was actually came about because we ended up using that as a project name, and the marketing team decided they liked it and decided to use it. However, they did not realize that there is an underlying acronym to that particular thing. So if you ever think about Blue Ox Mailbox, right, the first letter is capital B, second letter is capital O, third letter is capital M, fourth letter is capital B. So it ends up becoming basically an email bomb is what we ended up doing. So a lot of the business people didn't realize that until we ended up telling them that much later on. So always find that a little amusing, just a little IT humor. So we'll finish off here with some of the definitions. This will be the last four that we'll do here. Social engineering is the art of manipulating or influencing or deceiving a user into taking some action that isn't their own in their own best interest or the best interest of the organization. Usually you have a lot of these people like in phishing attempts or phishing or smishing, they're working on you, particularly with phishing and with phishing attempts where they're really trying to they may even contact you multiple times trying to get you giving more and more information. So they'll start out very, very light where it's nothing that would be something that would raise any red flags, and then they would gradually increase the pressure and eventually get you to give them some sort of thing like a social security number as they've gained your trust. Spear phishing is basically targeting attacks that can be highly successful because they are very, very personalized and appear to be very legitimate. Very hard to tell that they are a phishing attack in this particular regard. These tend to be very high value targets. Again, it could be in your organization like a chair or a treasurer that somebody would be going after. And they may be doing something where they'll send you email message from the chair to the treasurer going, hey, I need to, we're doing this particular campaign. I need you to end up sending this check to this particular organization. Here's the address. And then basically getting the treasurer, hey, I need this right away, basically. So it's something they have to do fast. And then the treasurer ends up sending out the check and didn't bother to check with the chair to see if that was a legitimate expense. So it's always a good idea, and you'll see me say this over and over, just validate, and verify. So, because you do see a lot of that happen as well. And then we have malware, which is basically software designed to disrupt, damage, gain unauthorized access or block access to a system. It's kind of really what we used to call a virus out there, computer virus. So you'll see a lot of that as well. And then you have ransomware, which is a specific type of malware that is designed to block access to the computer system, and it'll end up usually encrypting all your files until a sum of money is paid. And basically it'll start replicating either across the rest of the organization or across your home network. The best way to do this, if you do think you clicked on something right away, is to pull your network cable, shut off all your internet so it doesn't replicate to the rest of your network. Make sure you check all your other devices and then come back to the initial device that had the issue. Most likely you're probably going to end up having to wipe it and reload it. So hopefully you have a good backup system going on. And this one example of this that you may have seen that became very, very publicized was back in 2021. If you guys remember, there was the Colonial Oil pipeline, shut down the pipeline for multiple weeks. While this ransomware basically had taken over many of their systems. So definitely be cautious of that as well. And we'll get into a little bit more discussion later in the presentation on that. So the second trivia question, of the 724,526 cybercrime reports that, what was the percentage that were related to phishing, smishing, and vishing?
Okay, I'll end the poll and share the results.
So this is good. The answer to this one is C. It's 42%. So 300,497 attacks, or 41.47% of these complaints were basically the phishing, smishing, or vishing, and by far it's the largest attacks that ended up occurring. So these are definitely the most common that are out there, and you'll see that here by the FBI cybercrime report, which you can look up on the internet. And I believe I put a link to the latest copy of this in the appendix. So if you end up looking at the slides later on, you'll see that this whole report is in there. You can click on the link and download it. Basically, phishing, vishing, and smishing is well, at the top, you do have like personal data, which is second, or non-payment, non-delivery, where you end up looking to buy a product, you order the product and it was never delivered, or vice versa. You ended up doing like an auction site where you ended up providing the delivery for the product, but you never received the payment, or the payment ended up bouncing. You get extortion, where people are extorting you out of money. Tech support is also very high. That's usually somebody that calls you up saying they detected an issue with your computer and that they're your computer's vendor, whether it's Dell, Lenovo, HP. And basically they'll end up saying, hey, I need to install this piece of software to fix this. You go and install the software, and then they can basically take over your computer at that particular point. Identity theft is big, credit card and check fraud. And then the BEC that's down there a little bit is called business email compromise. That's where your emails are system is usually taken over, various accounts are taken over. That's also very common, especially around any of the organizations, both nonprofit and commercial. So, and if you saw recently, Microsoft had 24 organizations, I believe it was 25 was the count so far. It was actually the email tenants that were actually hacked by Chinese hackers, and that actually ended up getting reported out yesterday and today pretty heavily out there. So and there were a number of those that were government agencies where the email was compromised as well. So Microsoft said the attack started on May 15th and ended up discovered and investigated around June 16th. So that's how difficult it was to detect. So phishing basically is the most commonly method of this particular bad actors. They do use this to trick people into an incorrect action, such as clicking on a link or downloading a file or filling out a form. The emails can be disguised as coming from a trusted source or contact in the process. So a trusted source could be like a coworker, a friend, a family member, even a longtime vendor. And they do what they call spoofing, which is they end up making the email look like it's coming from one of those particular folks. However, it is actually not. So, and then when the user clicks on the link, or URL, it may be a link to a page that may look like, for instance, say your ChapterNet login page. And you may not realize it right away. You may put in your username and password in there. And either then the page doesn't go anywhere, or it ends up dropping you to real page or the real login page there, or even back to the site itself. And then you just go and put it in like you normally would, thinking, well, that was weird, must have been a glitch. And that is not the case. In a lot of cases, that may be actually where it was a phishing attempt, and you may have had your credentials actually compromised, where the bad actor ended up gaining access to that username and password, and then they'll just come in a little bit later and log in just like it was you, and then start to access that student data that's out there, as well. So, and there is basically I moved a little bit further forward here. There is basically a spoofing campaign like this going around, not necessarily with ChapterNet, as my example showed here, but with Microsoft Office 365 and Adobe Creative Cloud. There's been some companies that have been sending emails out where you click on it, it makes it look like you're going to the Microsoft Office 365 login for email or SharePoint or whatever, or going to Adobe's Creative Cloud to use some of their products as well. That was reported to be out just about 4 or 5 days ago. A newer technique too, from a conference that I was at, has been saying that the bad actors are starting to go back to using typos in their phishing attempts, because those people have a higher likelihood of being scammed or defrauded out of money, or being able to be blackmailed. So, again, watch for that as well. If an email has typos or really bad grammar into it, or it doesn't sound like the person, it doesn't sound like anything they would ever write, it probably is something like that, where it is a bad actor. And a lot of time, people are thinking they are clicking on a good link, but it's actually a malicious link or filling out a form. But another option that can be happen there is that they do click on a link and it downloads that malware software essentially onto your system, or it'll create an app basically, which whenever you do a financial transaction, will try and intercept and try and push that money to an offshore account. So it can infect your computer. So hopefully your antivirus will catch those. if you have that. So, and if you don't, please make sure you get antivirus on your computers. So, you know, and again, there'll be a lot of cases where phishing will have a lot of misspellings, odd requests, or when it comes down to it, it'll come at like an odd time, like 2, 3 in the morning, because it's coming from offshore. You know, so just be aware of that to check some of those things as well. But there are cases where it isn't so obvious, and I will be showing one of those here a little bit later on that was actually done against me, where somebody tried to phish attempt me. I actually, it was actually our HR person, and the HR person ended up contacting me going, hey, they're trying to divert your paycheck here. You know, so just wanted to make you aware that, you know, this is out there. So so always check for the subject line, always check the from address, always check the reply to address, the date and time really on that one, the message of the body, looking for spelling errors, typos, things like that, and hover or review links as well. You'll see that a lot of the time links will go to what the site actually says it does. One of the best tools or tips that I give to people to prevent phishing attacks is move the email if you think it's suspicious, or, you know, isn't sounding right or whatever, move it to your junk mail, because that will let you see all the information that is in that particular email. You'll be able to see whether it is coming from the right email address. You'll be able to see that it's coming from the right links and all that as well. So I can't stress that enough. Another tip that I like to use is Google whatever the organization or individual, if it's unknown, to see if they have an internet presence, to see if they have like a LinkedIn account, if they have any Facebook accounts, if they have a corporate website, if it's an organization, or even if it's not a nonprofit organization or something smaller like that, make sure you check that they have a valid URL out there as well. And a lot of time you can look at the About Us, and they'll have information about some of the executives and things like that as well. And then always verify using a trusted contact information as well. If they are asking for things like money or information, a lot of time, if it is one of those trusted resources, I'll either do a video call, a phone call. If I have a known email address, I'll actually go to my contact list and select that email address and reply back to them that way, and ask them if this is legitimate as well. So, you know, and again, I'll give some more examples of some of that here in a little bit as well. And then one of the things you'll probably hear lately is a buzzword that's been going out there that's called artificial intelligence. I like to think of it like Terminator, right? That's kind of what artificial intelligence was based off of, where you have a computer making some decisions out there. One of the big things with artificial intelligence is not so much that it'll likely be used with phishing, because the people doing phishing are so good at it. But what it will be used for is to go and ingest data. So it'll go through out to the internet and search for all sorts of information about you, pull that together to create a profile about you, so that they can do that social engineering that we were talking about, or that spear phishing attack, where it's very targeted for a high value target to get money or information blackmail or reputational damage or whatever that it may be. So here's a sample of a phishing attack here. You'll see that's coming from Mackenzie Scott here. She is asking for that she's donated $14 million to charities, individuals across the globe for her Scott Foundation to provide immediate support for people suffering economically from COVID-19. Apparently we are one of the lucky winners. I have a donation worth, you know, $100 million here out there, $100 million and $800,000 for you. And you can contact me if you're interested. Signed, Mackenzie Scott. She's former wife of Jeff Bezos, well-known ex-wife, got a large settlement from the divorce, so she's got a lot of money there. But as we're looking at this email, some of the things that you'll notice here is that you'll see here that the email address certainly does not look like it's coming from Mackenzie Scott here. It's coming from some government in the United Arab Emirates there. And you can see that as part of the recipients as well. Again, it is showing a trusted person, that she's the ex-wife and founder of Jeff Bezos, and that she's doing it through the Scotts Foundation. And, you know, apparently we are one of the lucky winners and some of that. So that sounds a little fishy to me. You know, there's there's definitely something where it would start raising some red flags, especially on that amount as well, out there for a donation. I think any of us would love to have that to our foundations out there. And if we end up looking on the internet, so I just did a Google search. I looked for Mackenzie Scott Foundation, and basically ended up coming back here with the 250 Mackenzie Scott Foundation, $1 million that she's doing, and she's called Yield Giving Open Call. So obviously back here it is definitely not called the Scott's Foundation. So that would raise definitely a red flag out there. And then I did another search as well, and I ended up looking for the Scott Foundation and noticed that with the About Us for the Scott Foundation, it was coming from the president, Shannon Hunt, and her husband, who happens to be Kevin Scott, basically who started the Scott Foundation. So it certainly was not Mackenzie Scott as well. So there's a good validation there, and then I would know to either report that or to, in most cases, just delete it and move on. So. And here's another sample of a phishing attack here. This is probably more of a one that we would use in a test here, but definitely looks a little bit odd here, especially looking at the URL. In this case, I'm throwing this in the junk mail. I can see the URL over here. It doesn't really look right. And, this is saying Google, but I'm not sure this is really right either. But if you do look at it, if it's coming from Google, those comments will be at google.com, not at notice-google.com. And the other thing you'd see is the do not click here. This could be any type of thing going out to any type of site, such as this detailinfo.co site here. You may be clicking on a form to fill out to get more information in this regard, or you could be downloading some malware by clicking on these particular links as well. So definitely a number of red flags in this particular phishing attempt email. And again, like I said, look at the from address, look at any reply to addresses, look at the links here and the body and how things are structured here. It would be very obvious that this is a phishing attempt there. So, and basically this one's a bit hard to see here. But basically this is a request. This is the one I was talking about earlier. That was to one of our Scholarship America HR staff members asking to redirect my direct deposit. So the message reads, "Hi, I recently changed banks and would like to have my direct deposit account changed to my new account. My previous bank account on record will be inactive in a few days before the next payday." So one of the things you'll notice about that is they're making effort to make you hurry up, like you need to do something quickly here. I hope it's not too late for an update before the payment is due. I will be waiting your prompt response. Now, again, our HR person knows that it goes through our ADPs to redirect our paychecks if we have any changes there. The other thing that she would end up looking at here too is that this would not be like a normal request for me. So she actually ended up contacting back to me. So she made the verification to come back to me here and basically asked me, is this a legit email? And then this one's really, really hard to tell. As you can tell here, it says Chris Stindl and Stindl at scholarshipamerica.org is not showing our normal external flag either, saying this is coming from the outside. I typically sign with my signature as well, but saying thanks Chris is not necessarily out of the options that would ever happen there. So this looks like a very legitimate email. Would be really kind of tough to figure out, unless there were some of the right controls in place and people were verifying. And as you can see here, when I go into the header information for the email, which most normal people would not do, but I happen to be an IT guy and kind of a geek, you would notice here that the Chris Stindl is going to this other email to address here when you reply to it. So it goes to the csquerii@outlook.com is the reply to address that they're basically trying to get that information sent to, and then trying to get you to respond then to giving them the information to redirect with the bank account that they have basically, which is probably going to an offshore account where that money will just disappear. So again, it never hurts to verify as well for all of that. So one of the other things that I'll end up talking a little bit about, another example of this would be kind of our there was a CEO that was going on a trip to China for a couple weeks, and he ended up taking off for that. The CFO ends up getting a couple days later, gets an email from the the CEO and president there, basically saying, "Hey, I'm working on finishing out this transaction here. I need to have $5 million wired to this particular account. Please do this ASAP. We're trying to close out a deal, and get this taken care of." So the CFO is going through and just like, oh, he's in China, it's long distance, whatever, other side of the world. I better go get this taken care of because he wants to take care of this right away. So he goes through, he wires that transfer payment through, doesn't really ask any questions, and that deal goes through. So a couple weeks later, the boss shows back up, back to the thing, and the CFO goes, "Hey, I'd like to know more details about that particular count that sale that you're making." And the boss is like, "I was on vacation. What are you talking about? This $5 million sale that we made." And then all of a sudden you have the big oops there, and then the boss, the CFO or CEO and president basically ended up having an incident, or having to call an incident through there, and they had to start trying to go through and see if they could reclaim some of those funds. I think they did reclaim a certain percentage of those, but it ended up being where a bad day, and certainly a bad day for the CFO, because after the investigation was over, that CFO ended up getting let go, because he did not take the time to end up calling the CEO, president, and verifying before that transaction was done, and making sure to ask the questions, the proper questions of what is this big, huge dollar amount of $5 million that we're doing for that. And maybe it wasn't as big of an amount for $5 million for a multi-billion-dollar company, but usually you would do some sort of scrutiny in that particular case. But if you don't, it can end up as a bad day. So the next trivia question is, how many phishing emails are sent every day? This is good. We had about 43% that ended up getting the correct answer. The correct answer to this one is E. There's an estimated 3.4 billion phishing emails that are sent every day, according to Astra Security and Splunk. Splunk is one of the big log management companies in the world, so they're huge. Astra has also got a very high profile as well. One of the big things you'll see here is that the world's population is 7.89 billion people. So if you think about that, there's basically a phishing attempt email going to every other person basically every day. So, basically every other day you're getting a phishing attempt on average across the world. So and some days you're going to get more and some days you're going to get less, but that is a lot of email being pushed through to get people to basically give out their information. And there's a lot of people, unfortunately, that fall for it. So trivia question 4 here is, how many phishing attacks were logged by the Federal Trade Commission in 2021? And remember, this is text messaging, so. Well, we were all pretty close here. The answer to this one is actually C. So it is 378,119 smishing complaints or test messaging complaints. And more than $131 million in 2021 was lost to smishing scams, and $330 million, so more than double, was lost to smishing scams in 2022. So it is becoming a more common attack. I can tell you, I actually had one here last week that I was dealing with. They're very hard to stop, when they do get going. This particular one, I think they were just trying to fish for people again in the text messaging world to try and get people to respond before they'd actually do any action to that. Fortunately for us, nobody ended up responding to this particular text message. One of the best ways to combat this is to actually send out a message to the organization or to the group, to your chapter essentially there, going, hey, this is happening. I ended up getting this. It came from a weird number. And it was a weird request with a weird link in there as well. Here's what the message looks like. If you do see this, please don't respond as well. And most phishing attempts are either bank related or delivery related text messages as well. So it's either like, hey, you had a failure to deliver this, or a product was delivered to your house even though it wasn't, and you end up clicking the link to look at what the tracking showed and who it came from and what time. The other way that you get is usually for something that happened with your bank, like there was a large deposit or a large withdrawal, most likely a large withdrawal from your bank account, and you want to go look up what it is, and you click on the link right away, and boom, there's the message out there that where it's, you need to put in your account information basically to get into your banking data. And then you do that, somebody gets your account information and then starts to do a transfer out of your account essentially. So again, always a good reason to check your bank accounts too, and just make sure there's no transactions out there, whether it's your chapter or not your chapter out there, even on the chapter account, to make sure that there's nothing that would be unexpected on a regular basis, or at least a semi-regular basis. So here's a sample smishing attack. This is one again that came to my phone here. It came from a number that was unknown. There was no caller ID information, although that can be, again, what they call spoofed, where somebody can change what that actually looks like. They're asking me to, my order has been successfully completed. I should go look at it, click on this link, or I can get a discount by clicking on another link out here. Just be aware that, in these regards, if you look at the links, they all look kind of weird. They don't come from any site. The site is even referenced within the text message as to whether this would be like Amazon or somebody else that I would normally go to in here as well. So definitely another attack here. And basically one of the ways that you can stop this typically is by reporting it either to the FTC or the FCC. Both of them will accept smishing complaints as well. Or you can, in a lot of cases, like in an Android phone, I can actually put my button or hold the text message. When I got the list of text messages there, I can hold the text message down for a couple seconds. It'll pop up a menu. I can play report, basically report it, or report spam, or report phishing there, typically. And either one will basically, if it says just report spammer in there, they'll still end up taking a look at it and likely block that particular account from happening, so others don't get affected as well. So basically this one here would be a phishing attempt here. The call comes in from a local number, shows you a caller ID of a known business, such as, we'll just say Acme in this particular case. They've been routed through the receptionist for a finance person in finance. They go, hello, Chris, we received a check or ACH payment from you and want to get this bank, get your bank routing number and account number, as it isn't going through, or it's cut off on the check and we can't tell what it is, or it's smudged or got damaged from water or whatever. Can you tell me what the routing number and the account number is so that we can process your payment? I've heard this happening, where somebody would do this. We're a bit of a time crunch. Can you please rush this? So they're making the treasurer, or they're making the finance person or accounting person rush to end up doing this particular scam. And then once they get this data, they can go through, they'll figure out, looking at your site, maybe a chair, or they'll find out, look at like another one, which might be like a president, CEO type person, or a finance person, somebody that can sign for checks. They'll send them something like, hey, we have this thing or this contract that we need signed, or this NDA. Can you please sign this NDA so we can talk further along? That NDA will end up getting signed, and they'll have the signature as well, and then they'll be able to essentially do ACH or check forgery as well. And actually, this particular example also came through from Frank I can never say his last name right, Abernathy. He was the Catch Me If You Can real life gentleman as well. I happened to be at a conference where he was at speaking. And he said, honestly, today, if he had the technology that is available today, he said, you can get such good printers, you can get the stock for the paper. He would still be able to cut checks today and probably never get caught there, because he didn't have to run back and forth where he had to do the big commercial printing presses back in the 60s when he was doing this. So just some scenario, basically, that would be a common scenario that we do. He did say that he ended up changing his life. He said, I went to jail. I did my time. When I got out of jail, he's like, do you think that I was really ready to change my ways because I went to jail? And he said, nope, I would have kept doing it. But he's like, basically at the time, love of my life, ended up basically saying, if you continue doing this, I'm going to leave you, and, I'm not sticking around. And he decided to choose her instead of taking the life of crime in this particular case. Ended up joining the FBI as a consultant and has been doing great work ever since. So banking scams, again, are one of the most common phishing attempts that are out there. And another one here is, and you probably have seen some of these happen across the US, especially over COVID. Hey, your car insurance is up for renewal. Please hit 1 to speak to a customer care specialist, or call them back at, give a number here. I just put 555-555-5555. And then they'll verify some information like your name, address, email, which can be found easily, usually on the internet, even through something that maybe was done through a city task or through your property, through the county collection site, or maybe generally a social media site is where a lot of this comes from, which can be easily found, which will help gain your trust, basically. And then they'll ask for more sensitive information, or say they need to collect a fee to be able to do this, or a cost basically to do this, and basically you won't get any of that money back. And this is a very common attack that's typically committed, fraud or theft against senior citizens or very young adults that, are often targeted. And it's really sad when you see a senior citizen that has lost, part of their life savings because they ended up getting caught in one of these schemes as well. If you ever do run into this thing, you're certainly welcome to reach out. My VCSO, who I work with, she is our virtual chief security officer. She helps us out where she'll pop in, give us some strategy and direction. She has some contacts within the Secret Service. They have had a very high rate. I think it's been like 80% of being able to reclaim a lot of that money that's been defrauded out of these folks, or the theft that's occurred from it as well. So we can certainly try and get you some of that contact information, or get them in contact with you or the FBI. So how to prevent phishing attacks, smishing attacks, and phishing attacks, now that we've talked about all that scary stuff. The biggest organization that we deal with, and with all the training that I do with the organization, we always reiterate, stop, look or listen, and think, because that is going to end up telling you a lot. If you stop about it, because again, a lot of these are trying to make you act quickly. And you think about it or you look at it, you're going to go, this is either too good to be true, or it's untrustworthy, or whatever. And again, I always use the old adage: if the email or the phone or text messaging seems untrustworthy, it probably is. Always follow your instincts there. Do your research. So again, do those Google searching out there for the company. Look up the social media sites, look up the Better Business Bureau or Dun & Bradstreet, very trusted sources, to see if this is a real legitimate organization or a foundation, or whatever we may have there. And the bad actors are preying on your emotions, the quick action, muscle memory work, or just trust factors. And if you do click on a bad link, a bad button, or attachment, please contact your IT resources as soon as possible out there to try and get that rectified here as well, and help stop that out there. If you don't have IT sources, you can end up reporting a lot of these to government agencies as well. So if you got a phishing email or text message, you can report it to help the fight. Usually, you got the phishing emails can be done to the FCC or FTC, again, along with smishing. You also got this anti-phishing working group, which is report phishing at apwg.org, that you can submit this to as well. And they help to try and stop phishing in its tracks as well. If you did get a smishing text message, again, a lot of time you can click and hold, and there's some way to end up sending it to your phone character, so they block it. or you can end up texting spam, the short code 7726, and that will end up reporting where you can put a report out there for it as well. Or again, you can go to the ftc.gov site. I think that's the easier of the two, /complaint, and just file a complaint through the web form through them as well. So, and they do collect that information. They do end up, sometimes they'll be able to act on it, sometimes they won't. So, but they usually will end up recording and keeping track of it. And if it keeps showing up, they'll be able to continue their investigation and maybe make a stop of that too. And again, typically reclaim money in that way too. So, or they'll get it referred off to the FBI. If you do get scammed through the typical phishing attack, highly recommend to call your local police, and they may work it up with the FBI as well to kind of help get that money back. Again, the Secret Service is a lot of them that handle a lot of those cash flow issues. If you did get a lot of the life savings type of thing taken care of, the bigger phishing type attacks there, we can certainly work again with the Secret Service to try and reclaim that money, or at least get the investigation and hopefully catch that bad guy. So trivia question 5 here. What is the ratio of homes that are infected with malware? So we were very close on this one. So a lot of people said D here. It actually was E. The answer is, according to the U.S. Government Center for Information Security Agency, or the CISA, which I'm sure you'll hear a lot about if you read any type of news out there. 1 in 3 homes have computers that are infected with malware. So definitely, again, make sure you have your antivirus solutions out there to try and catch a lot of that. They got things that are getting around the ones that are traditionally signature-based ones, like McAfee or Trend Micro or Norton out there, but they do end up catching quite a bit. A lot of the ones that we're using in the organization are called next gen. They use either AI or what's called machine learning, where they'll adapt as the malware adapts as well out there. Sentinel-1 is a big one. CrowdStrike is a big one. Carbon Black is out there. It's pretty big as well, although I'm not as big of a fan of Carbon Black. Or you got a few others out there as well that will show up in my slide where I talk about those controls as well. Just, if you can look for those. Again, McAfee is still good. It's certainly great for mobile phones, and do remember that a mobile phone or a tablet is still a computer, so it should have antivirus as well on those out there, so, or anti-malware. And so malware is commonly associated with phishing and smishing attempts. Again, when you click on those links, you'll get the downloads there as well. One of the big things here that you may end up having happening is you'll end up clicking on one of these phishing emails or the smishing text. It'll install some software on your phone or on your computer, and then the antivirus solution, say it doesn't end up catching it. You could have data that's exfiltrated. So if you do keep like printouts or keep like PDF files or Excel files on your computer, those could potentially be downloaded, off of the computer. So, and we'll probably get into that a little bit more about reasons why it's a bad idea to export student data or keep that onto your computer long-term, or even printing it out with the next session, which I'm looking forward to doing, which will be on data security and data privacy, with all the different privacy laws that are occurring, which is a really hot topic right now as well. But that will happen more in the next meeting. But most common malware is ransomware. What it does is you'll download the software install, start encrypting your files on your hard drive. You may notice that a message may pop up right away telling you that you have to pay, and then it'll replicate out to other devices within your network. So it may end up updating to another laptop if you have it open, or another desktop or computer out there. It could do one of your Internet of Things devices. So like whatever would be like if your fridge ends up having any electronics with it, where it can read the date, time, or Alexa apps or hardware devices essentially out there, or Google devices that manage your home. or even your TV, your smart TV, or a Roku box out there may end up getting infected as well, as it replicates out there. So there were 623.3 million attacks in 2021. That increased was an increase of 92.7% over 2020. The current data here too is that it's ransomware has cost the world 1.2 billion in 2021. According to CNN and Trend Micro, which Trend Micro is a very famous antivirus solution. Recovering from ransomware costs anywhere an organization around $1.85 million on average. Even individuals, it typically costs you around $4,500 because they do actually go after personal individuals because you don't have the straight security on your home computers anymore that you would have at work or a corporation where you have IT folks that are handling a lot of that. And for 2023, the ransomware groups have collected $449.1 million in just the first 6 months. It's due to be the second highest collection of ransomware on record and could even take over the #1 spot. So it's definitely making a big surge. That's where you had that drop from the 82% for humans to even 74% for humans as well as the what was called the Log4j vulnerability that ended up occurring. So other malware can be keyloggers, where it installs that is keeping track of and creating kind of a transcript of everything that you're typing. There could be spyware on there looking to see which sites you're going to, any bank account information. You have Trojans, which may end up being where it ends up executing at a later date to either infect your box or may cause damage to it as well. There'll be the rootkits, the bots out there, worms, which will try and replicate to other solutions or other systems out there. The big one that's happening nowadays is, again, your smartphone or your tablet. Those mobile devices are now getting infected because you have what's called multi-factor authentication. So that's where you end up having your username and password, if you remember the last presentation. Plus you have that 4 or 6 digit code that you end up typing in from your phone, whether it comes through like a text message or an application out there. So they're trying to get at that second factor of authentication so they can bypass both of them and get into either your banking app or delivery app or some other solution out there where they can end up surely getting money from you, but some of them may be covering to try and do reputational damage to you as well out there. So or they're trying to get data, spy on you, get data, commit identity theft. So they may end up opening up other credit cards and stuff in your name, or again taking data off your phone. So again, downloading it to your phone or to a computer generally is not the greatest idea there. So and so some of the security controls to kind of help some of these social engineering, phishing, vishing, smishing attacks is to do regular security awareness trainings. We generally recommend to do these annually. There are a lot of different sites out there. There are a lot of different webinars. There's a lot of security companies that do this, and you can learn a lot of information. I like to go to some of the conferences as well, although some of them can get very technical, but they do have ones that are beginner as well. KnowBe4, which is the company that I talked about where we do our phishing tests. They actually put out one that's for the general public every year. And they do have webinars out there as well that you can watch. So highly recommended that you go out to their site. Their site I put into the appendix as well. Snopes is another one that I would highly recommend too. If you're looking for something that's phishing where you think, hey, this might be a scam. Generally, you can do search Snopes and it'll tell you if it's a scam situation or not as well. I highly recommend regular system patching because that'll help protect you with a lot of the vulnerabilities that this malware will try and take advantage of. So make sure you enable automatic updates, make sure that's happening on a regular basis and that you're rebooting your devices at least once a month. And then endpoint protection. This is, again, that antivirus, anti-malware solution. So you could go with McAfee, you could go with Norton, you could go with Trend Micro. They're certainly better than having nothing out there. They will stop a lot of the malware and ransomware that's out there. The new ones that are called the next generation that are really the best because they're doing the adapting, they're handling with the AI as well. Is CrowdStrike. At Scholarship America, we use one product called SentinelOne. Cybereason's is another one, Carbon Black, although Carbon Black's been kind of falling behind a little bit. And then Cynet's another big one that's been out there and really growing fast. So out there. So, and then having email filtering solutions that'll go through and filter out some of these. And if you're using the Dollars for Scholars email account that we provide, we do use Barracuda for that here. But you could do Mindcast or Proofpoint. Scholarship America with using Barracuda, it blocks this last 30 days of blocked 27,386 potential malicious emails. There were 198 advanced threats that it stopped and over 12 viruses that it stopped in the last 30 days. I have 154,346 emails across all of our domains that we manage. So just be aware that does help having some of that if you are working with a bigger organization. Having that in front of anything that would be in front of Office 365 or Google. If you do have the paid versions of Google or Office 365, Office 365 they're using, it does okay. There's certainly better solutions out there, but it will stop a lot of stuff as well. And Google will also end up using their filtering system. I believe they use a third-party one. I should double check that here at some point. I don't recall what it is off the top of my head. But they do end up doing email filtering for the paid ones, but not necessarily for the free accounts. So, and then as far as for other security controls, there's things like application whitelisting, where basically you can mark which applications can execute on your computer. They have a program called ring fencing as well, so it won't let one program execute against another, so it won't allow. Like if you click on a link in Outlook, that won't actually open, another program basically that could be malicious, or your command prompt essentially within the OS that could be exploited to attack you. We also use the security operations centers. Ours is called Rocket Cyber. They ended up watching our logs, so we are protecting you that way. Where they review logs, these are generally pretty expensive, so probably not going to be done in your generally within your chapters, but we are using it here to watch the logs that are out there to see if there is any malicious activity as well, and they will detect things for phishing, smishing, and bishing as well, based on the various solutions or different software that we use, like Barracuda or Office 365 as well. DNS and content filtering will help from redirecting to a malicious site that will end up stopping that as well. And then there are, having good just access controls, and then really well written, basically security policies and procedures. I would say that's probably the biggest one outside of having antivirus on your systems, and really having, keeping your patching up to date. So making sure you have that verification policy in place, if you're going to end up sending out money or doing some sort of transactions, so that you do have some sort of a step in there to stop people. So anyway, thank you. I'd like to see if we have any questions. Feel free. I'd love to answer those. So.
Well, we are almost at time, and Chris, there are no questions in the chat, but just want to let folks know that we will send out this recording to you so that you will have access to it. But if you have questions right now, you're welcome to come off mute and ask them. Well, if not, it is 7:30. We want to thank Chris again for sharing with us this evening. One thing I would like you all to know, if you attended the last session with Mike Nyland, we shared with you that we would be convening a session for you all around FAFSA and the displacement and all of that. And so I'm 99% sure we have that nailed down for August 17th. So you might want to put a hold on your calendar for that date. And we'll get back out. We'll get a invitation out to you all, but just wanted to let you know that and make you aware of that. Okay. So thank you, everyone, and you enjoy your evening.